London, 1952, a city recovering from the devastation of World War II and moving towards modernity. But in December of that year, something unexpected happened. The skies over London darkened, and the city came to a choking standstill. What came to be known as the Great Smog of 1952 left a tragic mark on history. Today we're diving into how a combination of environmental neglect, industrialization, and weather created one of the deadliest environmental disasters the world has ever seen. To understand what caused the Great Smog, we need to look at the conditions leading up to it. Post-war London was fueled by coal, homes were heated by it, industries relied on it, and power stations pumped out smoke at alarming rates. The air in London was already heavy with pollution, but it was seen as the price of progress. Cold weather in early December 1952 prompted residents to burn even more coal, filling the atmosphere with soot and sulfur. But what really set the stage for disaster was a weather phenomenon called an anticyclone. This weather pattern trapped cold air over the city, causing a dense layer of fog to settle. But it wasn't just any fog, it was laden with the toxic particles being spewed into the air. By December 5th, the smog became so thick that visibility dropped to just a few meters. People could barely see their hands in front of their faces. Transport ground to a halt with buses, cars, and even ambulances unable to navigate the dense haze. Theatres and cinemas had to close because audiences couldn't see the screen through the smog inside the buildings. And yet, for many Londoners at first, it was just an inconvenience. London had experienced fog before, after all. But this wasn't typical fog. This smog contained deadly sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, and acidic droplets. As days passed, the toxic air began to take a toll, especially on the elderly, children, and those with pre-existing respiratory conditions. Hospitals quickly became overwhelmed. By the time the smog lifted on December 9th, the scale of the disaster was clear. While initial reports estimated 4,000 deaths, further research would later reveal the true extent of the tragedy. Over 12,000 people are believed to have died due to respiratory problems caused by the smog, and another 100,000 fell seriously ill. It was an environmental catastrophe unlike anything seen before in modern times. Many of the victims were those already living on the margins, people in poor health, children, and the elderly. The smog showed that industrial pollution didn't just harm the environment, it directly threatened human lives. The Great Smog of 1952 was a wake-up call for Britain. Public outrage and the staggering loss of life led to new legislation aimed at preventing another disaster of this scale. In 1956, the British government passed the Clean Air Act, which aimed to reduce air pollution by controlling coal burning in urban areas and encouraging the use of cleaner fuels. The act marked a major shift in how environmental issues were approached and set a precedent for environmental legislation worldwide. The Great Smog remains a reminder of what can happen when industry, government, and society ignore the warning signs of environmental degradation. It's a story not just about the past, but also about our responsibility to protect the air we breathe for future generations. So that's the story of the Great Smog of 1952. It's a grim chapter in London's history, but one that pushed the world towards cleaner air and a greater understanding of our environmental impact. For more stories of strange and obscure moments in history, don't forget to subscribe and follow History in Obscurity.